9:30 on the morning of February 23rd, 1955. Station master Thomas Wickett stood on the platform at Penzance station, watching something he had not seen in 27 years of railroading in Cornwall: snowflakes. Not the brief dustings that occasionally appeared on the moors. Heavy snow, falling hard. By noon, those flakes had not stopped. By sunset, they were still falling. By midnight, Cornwall, Britain's mildest county where palm trees grew and frost was rare, lay buried under the same Arctic blast that had trapped the Bleathgill locomotive in the Pennines 4 days earlier. 16 continuous hours of snowfall, railway lines severed, coastal stations paralysed, and a temperature contrast so extreme that Scotland recorded -25°C, while Cornwall struggled with conditions the county had simply never prepared for. This is the story of February 23rd, 1955, the day Cornwall forgot it was Cornwall. Standard procedure said snow in Cornwall was impossible. The Gulf Stream said so. Geography said so. 150 years of meteorological records said so. Nature had other plans. The storm began with a shift in wind direction at 0400 hours. Met Office observers at Culdrose noted it first. A northeasterly flow replacing the mild westerlies that normally bathe Cornwall in Atlantic warmth. Air that had swept across Scandinavia and the North Sea, gathering Arctic cold, now funneled directly into the southwest peninsula. At 06:30, the first flakes appeared over Bodmin Moor. Light at first, tentative. Within an hour, visibility dropped to 50 yards. By 0900, coastal stations were reporting conditions they had no vocabulary for. The last significant snowfall in Penzance had occurred in 1891. Most railway staff had never worked a shift in snow. Ever. Thomas Wickett had. Once. As a young porter in Devon during the winter of 1928. He recognised what was coming. He made 3 telephone calls before 9:15. First, to the district superintendent in Plymouth. Second, to the station master at Truro. Third, to the goods yard foreman at St Ives. "Get everything inside," he said. "This isn't stopping." He was right. The Great Western Railway's Cornwall main line ran 124 miles from Plymouth to Penzance, threading through some of the most exposed terrain in southern England. High viaducts, deep cuttings, coastal sections where Atlantic gales routinely halted services, but those were wind problems. Cornwall had procedures for wind, it had procedures for rain, it had procedures for coastal flooding, it had nothing for snow. By 1000 hours, the line east of Truro began experiencing delays. Not from snow on the tracks, not yet, but from signals obscured by the blizzard. Semaphore arms designed to be visible at quarter-mile distances vanished at 100 yards. Signalmen accustomed to clear Cornish light found themselves peering into a white void, unable to confirm whether distant signals showed clear or danger. Train movement slowed, then slowed further. By 1100, the timetable had become a fiction. At 11:45, the 8:15 Penzance to Paddington Express, already 2 hours late, ground to a halt 3 miles east of Redruth. Driver James Hosking applied sand. The 4500 class locomotive's wheels spun uselessly. The rails had become ice. Hosking tried again. Nothing. The train sat motionless in a cutting 20 feet deep, snow accumulating on the coaches at a rate of 1 inch every 12 minutes. He walked back to the guard's van. Guard William Penrose was already calculating. 214 passengers, 16 coaches, no heating if the locomotive could not maintain steam pressure. Nearest station, Redruth, behind them, Camborne, ahead, both approximately 2 miles. Both might as well have been on the moon. "How long can we hold steam?" Penrose asked. 4 hours, Hosking said. "Maybe 5 if we shut down the coaches. Do it." At 12:15, passengers in the rear 8 coaches felt their heating die. The train steward, Frank Treblecock, began moving through the cars with blankets from the sleeping compartments. He had 47 blankets. He had 214 passengers. He made decisions. Children first, elderly second. Everyone else would have to share. Outside, the snow continued. 20 miles west at Penzance, Thomas Wickett was dealing with his own arithmetic. 6 trains stranded between Penzance and Truro. 4 more between Truro and Plymouth. Approximately 900 passengers scattered across 124 miles of increasingly impassable track, and snowplows, Cornwall owned precisely 0 snowplows. The county had never needed them. Now, as Wicket stood on the platform watching the snow accumulate, 6 inches, 7, 8, he understood the scale of the problem. This was not a Cornish problem. This was a northern problem, a Scottish problem, happening in a place that had no equipment, no experience, and no procedures to handle it. At 1300 hours, he made a decision that would define the next 3 days. He telephoned the Royal Naval Air Station at Culdrose. "This is Station Master Wicket at Penzance. We have 900 civilians stranded on trains in blizzard conditions. We have no ploughs. We have no road access. I need helicopters." The duty officer, Lieutenant Commander David Thornton, had been watching the snow since morning. The air station had grounded all flights at 1000. Visibility 0, ceiling 0, wind gusting to 40 knots. Flying in these conditions violated every regulation in the book. "How long until people start dying?" Thornton asked. "Trains are losing heat. 6 hours, maybe 8. "I'll call you back." Thornton did not call his superiors in Plymouth. He called the helicopter section directly. Chief Petty Officer Robert Matthews had flown Westland whirlwinds in Korea. He had flown them in monsoons. He had flown them under fire. He had never flown one in a British snowstorm. "Can it be done?" Thornton asked. Matthews looked out the window at the whiteout. "Not legally." "That's not what I asked." Matthews paused. Then, "Get me a navigator who knows every railway cutting between here and Truro. Someone who can guide us by landmarks we can see from 50 feet up. If we can stay low, below the worst of it, maybe." 20 minutes later, a Great Western Railway inspector named Geoffrey Palmer sat in the passenger seat of a whirlwind helicopter, holding a 1-inch Ordnance Survey map and wondering what he had agreed to. They lifted off at 1400 hours, visibility at ground level, 30 yards, at 50 feet, slightly better, at 100 feet, nothing. Matthews kept the whirlwind at 60 feet, following the railway line by sight, Palmer calling out landmarks as they appeared through the snow. "Viaduct ahead, 45 feet high, 100 yards. Confirmed. Cutting, deep, 20 feet. Train should be there, 300 yards. They found the Penzance Paddington Express at 1417. 16 coaches buried to the window frames in snow, passengers visible inside, faces pressed against glass. Matthews brought the whirlwind into a hover 30 feet above the train. Impossible. The rotor wash should have created a blizzard of loose snow, blinding him completely. But the snow had fallen so heavily, packed so densely that it barely moved. Palmer opened the door. Wind screamed into the cabin. He lowered a rope. On the train, Guard Penrose saw the helicopter. He saw the rope. He understood immediately. This was not a rescue. Not yet. This was reconnaissance. He tied a message to the rope. 214 passengers. Heating failing. Need evacuation within 4 hours. Matthews pulled the rope up. Palmer read the message. Neither man spoke. 14 passengers per trip, if they crammed. 15 trips. 4 hours. Mathematically impossible. "Radio Culdrose," Matthews said. "Tell them to get every helicopter airborne. Tell them we need buses at every station. Tell them this is going to take all night." By 1500 hours, 3 more whirlwinds had joined the effort. By 1600, they had established a system. Helicopters shuttling passengers from stranded trains to the nearest clear station, buses ferrying them onward to Truro and Penzance. By 1700, they had evacuated 112 passengers. 788 remained, and the snow kept falling. The second crisis emerged at 1830, not from passenger trains but from freight. A goods train hauling coal from South Wales to Penzance had stopped at Hale, unable to proceed further west. The locomotive crew, driver Arthur Nankervis and fireman Colin Treelaw, had shut down the engine to conserve coal. They assumed rescue would come by road. It did not. The A30 road, Cornwall's main artery, had closed at 1700 hours. Drifts 12 feet deep blocked every route into Haley. The crew was not in danger. They had shelter, food, water, but the coal was. Penzance Power Station had 72 hours of fuel remaining. After that, Cornwall's electricity supply would fail. At 1900 hours, Station Master Wicket made his second critical decision. He called the army. "This is Wicket at Penzance. I need a tank." The staff officer at Plymouth Garrison thought he had misheard. "A what?" "A tank. Something that can move through 12-foot drifts. I have a coal train stranded at Hayley. If we do not get that coal to Penzance in 48 hours, we lose power to 18,000 homes." 30 minutes later, a Churchill recovery vehicle, technically not a tank but close enough, left Plymouth heading southwest. Driver Corporal Edward Finch had never driven through snow this deep. Nobody had. He kept the vehicle in second gear, moving at walking speed, pushing through drifts that buried the hull to the turret ring. He reached Hayley at 2300 hours, 4 hours for 12 miles. The coal train crew, assuming they were stranded until morning, heard the tank's engine first, then saw its headlights, then watched, disbelieving, as a 28-ton armoured vehicle churned through the snow and stopped beside their locomotive. "Thought you might need a hand," Finch said. By midnight, the Churchill had towed the goods train clear of Hale. By 0100 on February 24th, the coal reached Penzance. The power station's fuel crisis was averted. Cornwall's lights stayed on, but the passenger evacuations continued. By 0200, Royal Navy helicopters had lifted 407 passengers from stranded trains. 392 remained. The weather was worsening. Wind gusts now exceeded 50 knots. Matthews and his crews were flying at the absolute edge of airworthiness, holding hovers in conditions that would have grounded them anywhere else. At 0315, Matthews's whirlwind developed a vibration, not severe, but enough. He returned to Culdrose, landed, and found ice had built up on the rotor head. Mechanics chipped it away. 20 minutes later, he was airborne again. The last passenger left the stranded trains at 0640 on February 24th. 16 hours after the evacuations began, not one casualty, not one injury. The railway, however, was finished. By dawn on the 24th, the main line between Penzance and Plymouth was buried under snow measured not in inches but in feet. Drifts 15 feet deep blocked cuttings. Viaducts had become snow bridges. Coastal sections, normally scoured clean by Atlantic winds, lay under blankets of white. Cornwall had no heavy equipment. The nearest snowplows were in Devon. Getting them to Cornwall required clearing the line from Plymouth first. That would take days. The Great Western Railway made a decision that astonished its own engineers. They would clear the line manually. On February 25th, 300 railway workers assembled at Truro. Each man carried a shovel. They divided into 10 gangs of 30, each assigned a 1-mile section of track. They began digging. The work was medieval. No machines, no shortcuts. Just men, shovels, and snow. Some sections took 4 hours per 100 yards. Deeper cuttings took longer. The gang assigned to the cutting east of Redruth, where the Paddington Express had first stopped, worked 18 hours to clear 1 mile. They finished on February 27th, 72 hours of continuous labour. By March 1st, the main line was clear. Trains resumed normal service. The snow, already melting under returning Atlantic warmth, vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Within a week, Cornwall looked like Cornwall again. Green, mild, improbable. The Great Western Railway conducted an investigation. The findings were direct. Cornwall had been wholly unprepared for winter weather. The county owned no snow clearing equipment because such equipment had never been necessary, until it was. Recommendations followed. Purchase snowplows, station them at strategic points, train staff in winter operations, create contingency plans for passenger evacuation. None of it happened. Cornwall's climate argued against the expense. The Gulf Stream remained reliable. February 1955 was an anomaly, the investigation concluded, an outlier, a once-per-century event. They were almost right. Cornwall has not experienced 16 continuous hours of heavy snowfall since, not in 70 years, not once. But the people who lived through it, the passengers trapped in frozen coaches, the helicopter crews flying blind through whiteout, the railway workers digging by hand through drifts, they remembered. They remembered that when geography fails, when climate betrays its patterns, when the impossible becomes real, what matters is not the equipment you planned for. It is the decisions people make in the moment. Thomas Wicket calling Culdrose, Robert Matthews flying at 60 feet, Edward Finch driving a tank through snow, 300 men with shovels. Cornwall's forgotten blizzard taught a lesson the railway chose not to learn. Preparation matters, but improvisation saves lives. February 23rd, 1955. The day the mildest county in Britain became the coldest. The day 16 hours of snow paralysed a railway designed for Atlantic gales. The day 900 passengers were evacuated by helicopter in conditions that should have grounded every aircraft in southern England. And the day Cornwall learned that impossible just means we have not seen it yet. The snow stopped at 0100 on February 24th, 16 hours after it began. Exactly.